I had tea last week with my friend Carla, a lovely woman in her 80s. And from the moment that she sat down on my couch, she seemed anxious and upset. And I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she was very distressed by how fast her life was going by. Her family is very, very important to her, most important thing in her life. And her daughter had just had a baby, which would be Carla's new grandchild. And Carla said, I want to see her grow up. My life is speeding by. The last few years have gone so fast, and it's going to be over with before I know it. I want more time. And she almost started to cry. I know how she feels. I always joke that old joke, life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. And of course, we are told by quantum physicists that time is an illusion somehow. But, I have got news for scientists. This isn't very helpful to a normal woman in her daily life. It isn't very useful to talk about time as an illusion somehow, when we know very well that we do experience something called time, the arrow of time, as they call it. We do age. Things do change over time. We know, we can see, we can feel in our bodies that we are not at all the same at 60 or 70 that we were at 20 or 30. Something has happened. For our human purposes, we call that time. Time has happened to us. And now, as mature women, not only do we have less time in front of us than we do behind us, the time that we do have seems to be going faster and faster. That roll of toilet paper is just whipping around. It is true, in some sense, that there is no past. The past is a memory living in your brain, in your bones, in your blood. It's true there is no future. The future is a concept living inside your mind and your imagination. It's true that there is only now, as you hear said all the time. If we bring all our attention to bear on the here and now, there is indeed only now. But for us humans, the concept of time is useful because it keeps our tiny little minds from having to deal with everything all at once. And it helps us sort out the world and what it means to us in some kind of orderly manner. Time is a useful construct for us women. It's part of the way humans are designed to live in our human bodies. And even for those of us who reject the concept of time mentally, we have to deal with it physically. Even quantum physicists get old and die. Time happens whether you believe in it or not. I have noticed that as I age, time does seem to be going faster. I started the Goddess Temple in about 2003, I think it was. And the last 20 years has gone by so fast. Now I'm 68. If the next 20 years goes by as fast as the last 20, I will be 88 in the blink of an eye, like next week. I don't really like that idea. I like my life. I like living. I like creating. And I like the idea of creating more wonderful things like the Goddess Temple and the Museum of Woman and what I call my future. Like my friend Carla, I want more time to experience my life. Well, I'll get as much time in this human body as I'll get, and who knows how long that will be. I'll leave this body when the energy for this lifetime is done, I suppose, but I would like to change my perception that time is going by too fast for me, because that perception feels like a form of unpleasant pressure, like some invisible creep behind me, shoving me along every day, pushing me from behind. It's uncomfortable for me psychologically to think of time as something that is now going by faster and faster, that I'm losing time, that my time will be up soon. I never thought about these things when I was in my 20s or my 30s. And maybe if you're a mature woman, you might feel somewhat this way too, possibly. There are several reasons why time seems to go faster as we mature. There is a spiral of life, and the first half of your life, you are rising up the increasingly growing and widening spiral. And then the second half of your life, you are going slowly back down the decreasing spiral to the Bindu point, the end of the spiral, your death. At 80, you are much closer to the ever narrowing completion of your spiral of life than you were at 30. And so the comparison to a roll of toilet paper is pretty accurate. Our perception of time does go faster as we proceed back down the closing and narrowing spiral of our lives. And there are other reasons too. But for now, let's focus on one simple, practical way that we can slow time down. One perspective, one click of the mind, as my old teacher, Stuart Wilde, used to say, that we can hold for ourselves that will at least seem to give us a feeling of more time. Stuart said, changing our perception of time will make our lives thicker and richer. Those were his words. I'm a very pragmatic woman. I like simple and practical fixes for whatever is bothering me. I can't change time, but I can change how I feel about time. The normal human mind uses two types of mental processing, bottom up and top down. Bottom up seems to slow time. Top down seems to speed it up. We need both to live normally, but we have to have some kind of balance between the two. If you spend too much time in bottom up, you won't be able to hold down either a job or even a conversation. And eventually, they'll probably commit you to the loony bin. If you spend too much time in top-down processing, you'll be anxious, you'll be stressed, you won't be able to remember large chunks of your past, and your life will seem to be whizzing by. You will be crying in your teacup like Carla. By the time we are in our fifth or sixth decade, we have learned how to top-down process reality far too well. And most of us are now using this mental ability far too much of the time. We spend very little time now in bottom-up processing. So what is bottom-up processing? Bottom-up processing is the way the human mind works when it encounters reality with little to no mental mediation, no filter, no opinions. Bottom-up processing is what young children do automatically. They are constantly having new experiences of reality for which they have not yet formed opinions. It's all brand new to them. The grass, the trees, the dog, the sky, either sunny or cloudy or raining. They haven't even named these things, much less formed a judgment about the grass or the trees or the dog or the sky's activities. They simply encounter them as is. Green stuff, furry things, wet stuff from up there. It is what it is. Wet stuff from up there. No opinion. They don't say, oh, what bad weather we're having. I can't go out in this. They haven't lived long enough to form opinions about everything. They are simply collecting raw sensory data every moment. They touch it, they smell it, they hear it, they put it in their mouths and taste it, they feel it on their skin. They have a direct, unfiltered experience of all things they encounter that are new to them. But time passes and things don't stay new for very long. After a number of different experiences, particularly after repeated experiences with the same thing, the mind of a little human has gathered some useful information, and this begins the learning of the top-down process. They notice that they either like or dislike certain things. They form opinions. The idea, here is an interesting furry action creature they call dog, can become, I don't like dogs because one bit me last week and it hurt. I'm going to remember this from now on. I'm always going to feel this way about these little furry action creatures called dog. The experiential reality, wet stuff from up there can become, I don't like wet stuff from up there because when that happened last time, it made my body cold and uncomfortable. So now I'm going to call wet stuff from up there bad weather because I don't like it. I will remember this feeling from now on, and I will always feel this way about wet stuff from up there. This is the child learning top-down processing, a mental layer of opinion, judgment, discernment, words, and symbolism between them and the sensory data coming into their bodies from their eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and skin. Their experience of reality begins to be mediated through the conceptual framework that their mind is developing about the world. Ever increasing layers start coming between them and reality. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's natural. It's necessary. For us to form normally, we must learn this way of processing reality. First of all, it saves an awful lot of time, and it keeps us safer in some ways. If we didn't have this mental layer between us and reality, this layer of discernment, and then the opinion and judgment that inevitably flows from that, we would put our hand on the hot stove repeatedly. We would be forced to reinvent wheels constantly. Imagine if you had to approach every moment in your life as an infant with no experience, no discernment. You would have to relearn constantly how to respond appropriately to things in your environment. It would be exhausting. It would be untenable. It would be impossible. Top-down processing is essential to living what we think of as a normal life, a sensible life. But over time, as we become ever more knowledgeable about our world and ever more sophisticated in our responses to it, most of us can't help but rely more and more on top-down processing because it seems to work so well. And it does work well to a point. But also, over time, some part of us begins to believe that we need to take in less and less raw sensory data from reality because we have now collected in our minds all the opinions we have formed about reality. We think we already know everything we need to know about living, about life, about others, about relationships, about eating and drinking and our health and our spirituality and our money, everything. We begin to think that we don't need to attend to reality so much because we already know everything we need to know, we think. This makes us old and stale. The more opinions you hold, the older you seem to others. This over-reliance on top-down processing also tends to block fresh experiences from your life, block new energies wanting to flow into your life, block a sense of aliveness in your body. And it also speeds time up in a bad way. As we pay more and more attention to our opinions about reality, opinions that we might have formed years ago, decades ago, and is now based on very old data that may or may not be accurate anymore. As we do that, and as we pay less and less attention to the actual reality happening around us, we lose a lot. We lose life force, we lose freshness, we lose newness, we lose a sense of wonder, we lose our innocence. We stay away from dogs for decades because our top-down processing told us dogs are dangerous, and we miss out on having a possibly wonderful relationship now with that gentle, sweet dog next door. We're grumpy about a day of rain because decades ago we decided that rain meant being uncomfortable. And so now we don't go out in it. Instead of saying, green stuff growing from the ground at my feet, we say, my neighbor should mow his damn lawn. That looks terrible. As the decades go by, we become more and more removed from the actual reality around us. We're on autopilot, and we're not really experiencing real life. We're not understanding what is truly happening right now around us. We're just recycling all our old opinions inside our heads, and this is not good. So what does this have to do with time seeming to speed by? If you've ever gone through a terrifying, life-threatening event, say a bad car accident, you might be familiar with the idea of how time can slow down in special circumstances. In 1975, when I was 20, I was living in Salt Lake City, and I was driving on the freeway, maybe 65, 70 miles an hour, to a hair appointment, when suddenly my steering wheel just completely disengaged from my tires. The steering wheel just went slack in my hands. I had no control over the direction of my little red Toyota. I thought, holy shit, how can this be happening? My attention zeroed in on the road in front of me. I must not hit anything. But all I could do was gently tap the brakes to slow my speed gradually and hope for the best. I could not control the direction of the car. So my car veered off onto the top of this, off to the right on this very steep embankment. And then suddenly I was flying through the air, rolling over and over, seeing the sky, then seeing the ground, seeing the sky, then seeing the ground, then seeing the sky, then seeing the ground, and then seeing the ground hard. What I most remember as the car hit the top of the ditch and then bounced up off the earth into the blue sky were these very strange, large, flat, dinner plate sized pieces of what appeared to be red cardboard, sort of leisurely sailing through the air, coming at me like this in slow motion, like slow motion frisbees coming at me from the direction of the windshield. And I could not imagine what these things could be. I was completely mystified. And in this space of time, I started to think about all the possibilities of what these flat red pieces of cardboard coming at me. I tried to think what they could be. I couldn't come up with anything, but a fair amount of time went by as I thought about it. It turns out that those giant flat red plates or pieces of red cardboard were actually the tiny red paint chips off the crumpling hood that were flying at me at super speed through the breaking windshield. And I only figured out what they were much later in the ER of St. Mark's Hospital as I regained consciousness, and I looked down and I saw I was covered in tiny little red paint chips, and I started brushing them off me. When you are forced by a sudden event, a physical event usually, to pay absolute attention to the material reality around you, time will probably slow down for you, just as it did for me in the car. How did the paint chips get so big and move so slowly? Well, they didn't. My perception enlarged and slowed. People watching the accident would have seen the whole thing from takeoff to landing in all of 3 seconds. For me, it seemed more like 3 minutes. Many people have related stories like this in some sudden threatening physical event. They remembered that they felt that they had plenty of time to take it all in, to decide what to do, even though others watching them saw the whole thing unfold in just a few seconds. Time was different for each witness, depending upon the individual use of cognitive resources. This is the key. Top-down processing relies on previous information stored and decisions already made about that previous information. And so it requires less use of cognitive resources. And the fewer cognitive resources you have to apply to mental processing, the faster time seems to go. A night's sleep can seem to pass in a few moments. People who have been in comas for years and wake up are shocked that it seems to them that hardly any time has passed at all. When you rely on top-down processing, you are applying fewer cognitive resources to your moment-to-moment experiences every day. So time seems to go very fast. But every person who goes through their life on autopilot, top-down processing all day, every day, with their life whizzing by, can find themselves jolted instantly into the slowness of bottom-up processing by, some sudden and immediate physical danger, just as I was, something that requires all their cognitive resources to be brought to bear to deal with that immediate danger. When you are facing physical threat, you are forced to pay very close attention to the actual experience happening to you rather than your mental opinion and thoughts and decisions you made about danger like that, decisions you made long ago. So time will slow for you. My dear friend Craig told me of how he almost drowned years ago. He was swimming on a lovely day out at Laguna Beach, and a riptide caught him and carried him far out, and he was struggling against the riptide. He became exhausted. The lifeguard did not see him. He was terrified. He started to go under, and he said that as his head went under, time began to slow down. He saw the bubbles from the air in his bathing suit below, moving slowly upwards, rising in slow motion. He saw his feet, which just a second ago had been kicking furiously and fast, all of a sudden moving very sluggishly and slowly. And seaweed floated by his eyes, just inching along in these unnaturally slow waves around him. And he said his lungs were screaming for air and he was unable to stop himself. And he started lung sucking huge gulps of seawater. At that moment, a being appeared in the water in front of him. He thought of her as an angel because he said she had huge wings behind her, which were very slowly waving in time with the watery motion around her. And her presence immediately calmed him, and she very kindly said, "Not yet." Although he was aware that he was drowning, he felt complete peace and calm. He then lost consciousness, and the next thing he knew, he found himself thrown up on the shore, coughing and gagging up salt water. He was naked, covered in sand, and his swim trunks were nowhere in sight. Craig said that nearly drowning was the most beautiful experience of his life, and it all happened in very slow time. Desperate to survive, all his attention was forced onto the present moment, on the now, and time slowed for him. Well, increasing the stakes generally does wake us up and take us off autopilot, but we can't go around creating car wrecks and drownings to make ourselves feel that time is not going by so damn fast. But we can understand that at this age, we might do well to consciously choose bottom-up processing much more of the time. We've become too reliant on top-down opinions about life. And this state of consciousness is speeding everything up. At some point, I think we've all had enough of the mentalness of top-down processing. Perhaps now it is time to return more frequently. Not always. We have to top-down process frequently to live our lives, but maybe now it's time to return more frequently throughout the day to a more innocent state of attending to unmediated actual reality. This is a fancy way of saying be mindful. Maybe let go of some of your opinions as you're going about your day. As you walk by your neighbor's unmowed lawn, just notice what is. That is green grass growing. No opinion about its length or what that means for your property values. Walk in the rain without opinion. Maybe you'll find it refreshing. Time also moves faster when you make your life about being busy. Americans seem to be so proud of being busy, more than any other country I've ever been in. But the more you choose busyness as a daily lifestyle over a long period of time, the faster your life will seem to go, and the less of it you will be able to remember. There are 1,000 things that you think you must do today. Maybe really you only have to do about 100 of them. With your free time, you could slow time down even more by meditating for 20 minutes, which does slow time down. See what life is like when you do not have endless opinions and thoughts about reality, when you just experience it directly, without comment, without that narration in your head. We have come to depend upon our opinions to make us feel real, to make us feel important. But that's not what makes us real, and it's not certainly what makes us important. What makes us know we are real is our own awareness. And our awareness is not dependent upon our opinion of reality. It is dependent upon paying close attention to reality, of being aware of reality as much of the time as we possibly can be, not going on autopilot. Take a walk every day and see how long you can go just noticing everything around you in the now moment. Allow your thoughts to arise as they will in your mind, that pile of laundry, that fight you had with that stupid coworker, the worry about the car repair bill. Let all those thoughts bubble up, sure. And then just gently redirect your attention to what is around you right now, your right now reality. Here is a tree with pink flowers. There is some grass with yellow spots. There's a car with a person in it on the phone. Over time, we have gotten the idea that it is our knowledge our opinion, our judgment that keeps us safe. And this is true up to a point. But beyond that is a deeper way of staying safe, being present, being with reality is what really keeps us safe. This is the space where you intuitively respond and where you immediately, intuitively know what to do at every now moment in a spontaneous but perfect way. So we bless our minds for their top-down processing powers, and we are grateful for all those powers have given us throughout our lives. Then maybe we put that power aside for a bit every day and just be with reality in an unfiltered way. It brings us a new perspective, which keeps us feeling younger and which will feel like the gift of more time. If Carla can be with the moment-to-moment reality of her life, she will find that, as Stuart used to say, it is thick and rich, and that she has plenty of time to be with her new granddaughter, all the time in the world, all the time that she needs. And so do I. Maybe so do you. Blessed be.